Guys, when I was 14 years old, I had a guilty pleasure, I have to admit. My guilty pleasure was that I loved to watch the 1999 Duke team play. Around here, that was a sin. I would VHS their games whenever it was possible and then watch them in total secrecy. In particular, I really enjoyed watching the 1999 NCAA tournament game between Duke and Temple. That was a VHS tape that I watched a lot. There were a lot of incredible plays in that game. Temple had a really good team that year, and there were lots of characters, and it made for a lot of entertaining moments. Stay with me, but at some point during the game, Clark Kellogg made up a word that I never forgot. Watching Elton Brand operate near the rim, Clark described Brand's style as strong but soft. He kills you Stroftly, and then compared it to the song. I thought that was brilliant. What he meant more specifically was that Brand had an amazing strength and a size that he could utilize inside. We all know that. But he didn't just barrel into people and try to leave them in the fetal position under the basket. He used his physical tools like a hammer and a chisel, not like a jackhammer. Almost 20 years later, which is disgusting to say out loud, that phrase came to mind as I watched tape of Vernon Carey, the number 2 player in the class of 2019. Vernon Carey is a 6'10" and 240-pound, although I'm not totally sure that's correct, Cruise and Bruise high school junior with the body of a prototypical 1990s NBA power forward. He's got a 7-foot wingspan, and he's highly coordinated, physically mature, and exceptionally skilled. If you're a football fan, you probably know that Vernon is named after his dad, the former Miami Hurricane who went on to play offensive tackle for the Miami Dolphins in the NFL. Watching the younger Carey gallop up and down the hardwood, that explains a lot. He's built like a grizzly bear, and with those NFL genes, it's no surprise that he moves extremely well for a guy his size. He's also sneakily explosive for such a big guy. Occasionally, he'll do something on the break that'll make you go, "What?" His hands are really impressive for a guy his size too, and he's very quick when he makes his moves around the rim. He wrangles tough entry passes, snatches up loose balls, taps in, misses. I didn't see him losing the ball near the rim really at all while I watched game tape of him. He's got some really good paws. He's very coordinated, and he can be remarkably quick to the ball when he's engaged on defense. His combination of girth, touch, and quickness getting off the ground give him a big physical advantage around the basket. Every time a guy Carey's size gets in the air, he's already claimed his space because he's so heavy. And the first thing that you have to do is just to keep him from bowling you over entirely. And if that weren't enough, his second and third jumps are surprisingly quick. And this is extremely tiring for opponents on the glass. Because of this, Vernon is one of those guys that racks up a lot of nonchalant, easy buckets around the rim. You look at the box score at the end of the game and you think, wow, he had 25 points and 10 rebounds. I do think that this is going to translate for him to the college level.
A dump truck on ice skate.
So let's say you're game planning for Vernon Carey. You just need to keep him off the glass and you're probably good, right? Yeah, there's more. Like we mentioned before, Vernon does have a high skill level. For his staying power at the college and NBA levels, I think Vernon's ability to discern which situations call for which aspects of his game will be critical. The days of him shot faking from 22 feet away and getting all the way to the rim, those days may be winding down. Leaning on this at the college level would likely lead to a lot of charges. It could just be a case of refining and accepting his offensive identity once he's on the floor with better players and tightening up those moves that he's so good at in face-up situations a bit, because college and pro defenses are just savvier at digging out steals from big guys that expose the ball off the dribble in the middle of the floor like that. Maybe instead of making that move on the perimeter, you face up and make it from 10 to 15 feet out, sort of like DeMarcus Cousins does. In terms of a back-to-the-basket game, I've seen glimpses of it, but not much more than simple baby hooks or drop-step dunks. The reality here is that Vernon hasn't had to do much more than that to this point. The promising part about Vernon's game, though, is the fact that his hoops IQ does appear to be high, and I think that improvement in those areas is very possible. Imagine what Vernon's game is going to be like when his situational understanding takes a leap. That's frightening to think about. I would put Vernon's game somewhere between Caleb Swanigan and Maurice Spates. He shoots it better than Swanigan, but he's not quite as good a shooter as Spates at this point in the mid-range, but physically he reminds me of those guys. There might even be a dash of David West in there. Although I do think that Carey is a better leaper than all three of those guys. Guys like Vernon all encounter the same thing as they progress up the ranks of organized basketball. At some point, it behooves them to really pay attention to their bodies. Keeping the weight off and staying committed to staying in tip-top shape will be an important area of focus for him, as his weight has fluctuated a bit during his amateur career. This makes you wonder about how his body will respond should injuries ever come into the picture. This will also impact another area of concern that I have for Vernon going forward, and that's defensive foot speed and footwork. But something that I always look at with big guys is their gait, the way they run. Do they labor when they run? Are they light on their feet? You watch a guy like Marvin Bagley, super spry and light on his feet, or like Akeem Olajuwon was an incredibly fluid big guy. Vernon runs and plays pretty upright. Because of the limitations of Vern shooting off the bounce, I have to wonder if he will ascend to the highest level as like an all-star or an all-NBA type guy down the road. He does, however, strike me as a guy that could potentially just be a career starter and a contributor, or at least a rotation guy, which we shouldn't be ridiculous with our standards and act like that's some sort of failure. But can he consistently finish against the endless parade of long athletes in the NBA? Is his shot ever going to be consistent enough for it to be a real threat? His skill set and the potential pluses that he could bring to a team are just too apparent and obvious. He has a high floor and a reasonably good ceiling. I do, however, think that Vernon will be a high impact player in the college game within the next year and a half, wherever he chooses to go. Let me know if you agree. Thanks.